I was reading a story recently that reminded me of an event from over 20 years ago. In the second half of 1998, I'd taken a job as a security guard at a plant that made locks. Being a kid, I usually worked one of three shifts: 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., 7:30 p.m. to 3:30 a.m., 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. The 7 to 3:30 shift was for extra coverage, so there were always two of us there from 7:30 to midnight. It was a routine, boring job for the most part. We did our rounds, logged anything out of the ordinary, and watched a tiny monitor displaying the CCTV feed. Things went in an almost painfully normal manner for almost 6 months. I worked, saved, bought a car, and planned to move. By late March of 1999, I served my notice and prepared to head across country. A new hire was brought in to fill my spot, a soft-spoken man named Calvin. As part of his training, Calvin spent time working at all hours. At night, he was a shadow, working with myself and other night guards, getting a feel for the plant's nocturnal routines. Most nights, he worked with myself and Amira, a female guard who was around my age. I was 18 at the time. Calvin, who was about a decade older, was quiet and polite, though something seemed to be missing. There was a spark that genuinely nice people seem to have, that he did not possess. Whenever he went on rounds with me, he'd ask questions about the job and make small talk. I noticed that he was a little odd, laughing at odd times and changing his tone mid-sentence. At the time, I just chalked it up to him being an awkward guy, but that wouldn't last. One night, near the end of his first week, he went on rounds with Amira. When they returned to the office, I knew something was wrong. She was normally talkative, but now she would barely say a word. I'm not really sure what had occurred, so I waited until Calvin had gone to the restroom to ask her. During their trip, everything had been normal until they reached the brass mill, a portion of the plant that shut down around 6 p.m. There were usually no employees there after that time, and no lights. They were making their way to a checkpoint on a landing atop a flight of stairs, when the mood shifted. She told me that she turned around, only to find that he was right on her. Startled, she backed up against the grating at the end of the landing, and he leaned in toward her, his face nearly touching hers. He flirted in a low voice, and when she mentioned his wedding band, he said it would be over soon. From then on, I did the rounds, taking Calvin with me each time. That night ended without any further incidents, and I left a note for our supervisor detailing what had occurred. The next night came and went with no Calvin. I did the rounds while Amira stayed in the locked office. Same thing the night after. Then, on my second to last shift, I come in to find her freaking out, and she'd found out why Calvin hadn't been at work. He'd been arrested for murdering his wife. She'd been dismembered and burned, parts of her body placed in a pond less than a mile from where we worked. That night and the next, Amir called the jail just to make sure that they were still holding him. Based on that time frame, he killed his wife months before he started the job.
I've posted this before in another thread, but I feel like it fits here. So this happened to me on my graveyard shift. I was helping another short-staffed store across town out. So, I had a woman come in. She seemed a little frazzled and is carrying a Bible, but otherwise, she seems fine. She buys some chips and then starts talking to me about how crazy this coronavirus stuff is, yada yada. Then she tells me that she ate an evil spirit pretending to be a clove of garlic. I, of course, thought that she was just messing around with me. But no! She pulls out a piece of garlic and lays it on the counter and starts telling me that the garlic is in fact a demon that wanted to possess her. She then starts talking to me about if I believe in spirits, or if I can see it because despite looking like I'm one of the humans that's a third demon, I'm really a human who is a third angel who was sent to Earth to help her expel these evil spirits and urges that she feels, and that it's okay if I don't know yet, because she can see it. And she leaves the garlic on the counter, and tells me that she'll wait for me to deal with it. Now, that's pretty much where the original incident ended. A few days later, about 2 a.m., maybe 2:15ish on a Tuesday, I'm working the graveyard shift at my usual store when this woman pops up again. She proceeds to just buy some candy and sort of hang out asking me about jade, the jewelry type, and insists if we've met before. Nothing as weird as before. Now, the weird thing is, I didn't hear or see her come in before she approached the counter. We have a weird loud-ass siren thing that turns on when the door opens and only shuts off when they're closed, which is normally not a big deal, but considering I'd been stocking and cleaning in the front for the whole time and had only gotten 2 or 3 customers beforehand, yeah, it was a little bit weird. She hangs out a bit longer and then rushes to the bathroom and doesn't walk out till about 6. Says to me to have a nice day and just walks out of the store like nothing. Which freaked me the fuck out because I cleaned the restrooms a little bit after she went in, and she somehow managed to slip out and or hide somewhere when I went to clean them. Outside of hiding in the bathroom stalls, there is nowhere to hide in the restrooms, and there's no windows to slip out of. And like a jackass, I looked up at the top of the stall at the ceiling, thinking she had pulled some Spider-Man shit. But nope, she just poof. Disappeared and then reappeared, and left super casual a couple hours later.
A little over a year ago, I had a job working overnight at a gas station close to my house. I'm a woman and was 31 at the time. I know, to some, it seems unsafe for a woman to work graveyard shift by herself. However, it was a slow store, and the sheriff's office was only 20 feet across from it. There would be about 30 customers in an 8-hour shift, and that was on a busy night. It was 3:30 in the morning. I went outside to sweep the parking lot and do a last-minute check of the trash. It was time for a cigarette. I had one headphone in and was just kind of jamming out. Across the road in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, I saw a figure with his back to me. He was swaying back and forth while looking down. Honestly, to me, it looked like he was enjoying a much-needed piss. Against the sheriff's office, though? Yeah, that building closed up at 4 p.m. Didn't open up again until 6 the next morning. But why there? By the back of his ripped white t-shirt, I remembered that he had come in about 4 hours earlier. He was a total creep, and I could already tell he had a good buzz going. I didn't say anything. I just took my eyes off of him and tried not to draw any more attention to myself. It was working until a car pulled in. I was still outside as that car pulled up. I saw that man glance over at the car, then at me, back and forth once more. As that same customer who pulled up was leaving, I walked back outside. I still had half a smoke burning and had left my dustpan outside with the squeegee. We both heard him start to swear angrily, seemingly engage in an argument with himself. She looked across the road and told me to be careful. I made some kind of awkward joke about him being the one who should worry and not me. Something like that. The man was still out there but closer to the road now, facing the parking lot of my store. Whatever he was yelling was completely unintelligible. He was obviously very drunk and can barely stand straight, still swaying away. I did not engage with him, but I didn't take my eyes off of him. I just slowly walked back into the store. Something about that man's face just really bothered me. It had a darkness to it, and his eyes looked completely wild. My experience working graveyard shift has told me that the crazy-eyed ones are always the worst ones and the ones to look out for. I didn't like it at all, and I wanted no part of it. I looked up at the clock. I still had 3 hours to go, and 2 hours before any other employee got there. Instantly, I went to the computer and typed up a temporary close sign, just in case he wanted some kind of trouble. I was coming around the corner on my way to the doors. When I glanced up, I saw that he was no longer on the opposite side of the road. He was on my side now. I literally had just barely gotten the second door locked when he stumbled into our very small parking lot. I took my hand and mimed the hand signal for cut across my neck, conveying to him that, nope, sorry, you can't come in here, we're closed, and shook my head back and forth, hoping to further discourage him. He started walking away but screamed something at me while he was walking. And I don't mean he was grumpy and shouted at me or yelled that I was an asshole or anything. I mean like he was an enraged volume and was violently throwing his hands everywhere. I decided to call the cops, and it was a good thing I did too, because the minute I hung up with him, he came up directly to the doors. He starts banging and pulling on them. Then he backs up and tries to ram them. I yelled out, telling him that I had the cops on the way and his ass was about to be grass. Once I said that, he took off. Once the police got there, they drove around the road and surrounding neighborhoods for over an hour, but found no one. He was on foot, so I don't know where he could have gone to. Thankfully, I wasn't harmed during this entire event, and because the police didn't find anyone, I didn't fill out a police report or anything. I was safe behind those thick glass doors that were locked for the rest of my shift. Maybe if I didn't warn him ahead of time, I wouldn't have to spend the last 3 months of my job constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll never really know what the right choice was. I'm just glad that I don't work there anymore. This happened a little over 2 years now. I wanted to post it somewhere just to look back on it one day and never forget the lesson that I learned. Yes, this is real. I wish that it wasn't. It was 2016. I just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, we'll call him Michael, got me this job. For a few days, I did the training with the owner in the mornings, and then for 2 nights, Michael trained me himself. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Nothing exciting, checking guests in and just doing paperwork. My boss, who's the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which is attributed to the swift training that I had to endure. It was my first night alone on that night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property, large glass windows that were all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night windows like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night, I'd say about 1 a.m. I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork when a man walks in and asks if we have any rooms available. Usually if someone is sketchy, my boss has me lie and say no, but this guy seemed normal at the time. Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course. Just for one?" He replied yes, so I began creating the reservation on the computer when I noticed he starts swatting the air and making spitting noises, as if he was surrounded by flies. I tried to ignore it. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't any of my business, so I tried to just check him into the room as quickly as possible. I gave him his key, and he went on his way. At this point in time, I could definitely be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can all understand my reaction as to what happens next. The man comes back from his room, slams his hand on the glass door, and causes me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I looked up to see him just staring at me. He cracks the door and puts his head in through and says, "I can't get into my room. Why won't you let me into my own room?" My only defense is trying to be helpful, so I replied, Maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me get you another one." The look he had in his eyes was inexplicable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key, and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he's the one who trained me. It was the middle of the night, and he was asleep. I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back to me. I go into an absolute panic mode. I run into the back office and lock the door, and pulled out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection on you while working at night. Then I hear the man in the office yelling, "Hello? Hello? Why won't you let me in my room? Do you not like me?" Me being an absolute idiot, not standing my ground and calling the police when I'm feeling scared, I decided to just take this situation on alone. I reply, "Hey, I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out, sir." Then I start calling Michael over and over for help. No answer. I decided to take a few deep breaths and then just step out of the office. The man was not there. He was now in the bathroom. I started hearing him talk to himself, angrily saying, "Killer, killer." My heart sank. Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he comes out, and I say, "Sir, your key was broken, I'm sorry. Just let me escort you to your room." He agrees, thankfully. I was wearing a long sleeve sweater, so with my arms down, I was able to hide my knife in my hand while holding it. I started to walk outside, and he seems incessant on walking behind me. We begin making our way to the staircase and up toward his room. I was sweating from how nervous I was, continuously looking behind me to make sure that he wasn't going to make some kind of move. He stops at a random room, and then I stop at his room a few doors down. I smile and say, "Oh, that's the wrong room, sir. This is your actual room," as it clearly said on the door. The whole time he was going to someone else's room trying to open up the door, and I definitely felt bad for them. I quickly ran back to the office and locked the door. The next guest I check in was a police officer from a few towns away. I felt bad for confiding in them about the guy, but they seemed willing to keep an eye out and an ear out too. The next night the man came back, but I had the doors locked and told them that we were all booked up. I explained to my boss what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't seem to take me very seriously. I continued to work there on night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters happened. But to that strange man, to never ever meet again. And to anyone reading or listening to this, if you ever feel uncomfortable, always call the police. Thanks for reading. I used to work at a coffee place. We opened up at 5 in the morning, but we were there at 4:30 to set up. We closed at 8 p.m. and left by 8:30 or 9, depending on when we finished up cleaning. One night a week was a deep cleaning session, so we'd have to leave closer to 9:30 or 10. I did my fair share of both opening and closing in almost my 4 years there. Definitely saw some pretty interesting folks in all that time, especially when opening. Lots of homeless people who were sadly mentally disabled or drug addicted. We were in a part of town that was not as nice as it used to be. One morning when I was opening, myself and the opening barista, I was the supervisor at the time, we were the only ones in the store. I was in the back of the store setting up some tills, and she was in the front brewing coffee and tea and so on. Suddenly, she starts screaming bloody murder. I grabbed a box cutter and ran to the front. She'd been cleaning a drain on the ground by the sink right next to the drive-through window. She had been bent down, but when she stood up again, a man's face was pressed up against the window, literally inches away from her face just through the glass. He was just staring at her with this huge, super terrifying grin, super dirty and messy, and for some reason, had a pink blanket wrapped around his shoulders. As my barista began screaming and crying, mostly shocked from how quickly he'd randomly appeared and how close he was to her, he started cackling. It was funny to him. I don't really know why, but it pissed me off. I didn't open up the window, obviously. I just told her to go back into the back of the store and then made eye contact with that guy to the window and scowled as hard as I could, pointed down the street and yelled, "Off now." He looked taken aback at first, but then kind of just stumbled down the street. He lingered on the block for a long time, but eventually left for good. I kept an eye on him for a while, then went back and tried to calm down the barista. Another time I was opening with a different barista. For reference, I'm an average-sized female in her early 20s. The barista that was opening up with me was in his late 30s, and it was a male. When we opened the store, we'd wait in the parking lot for another person to get there. One barista, one supervisor, and then walk into the store together. I arrived before him, and when he got there, he parked a few spaces away from me. His car is black and small, so it could be kind of hard to notice in the dark and when it was a ways away. When I realized he was there, I got out of my car to meet him. He left his car too, and was walking towards me when he suddenly just starts yelling, "Get the f*** away from her!" and then running super fast at me. I heard footsteps run away from behind me and I was just completely shocked. Apparently someone had been hiding behind my car, waiting for me to get out. They hadn't noticed my coworker show up and was scared off by him, thank God. so I didn't even notice that anyone was there. A few weeks later, when I was closing with a different barista, my barista's partner was picking her up from work that night and was waiting in the parking lot since she got there a little early. Luckily, the barista's partner was also a cop. She noticed someone was crouching behind my car and called her partner to tell her to tell me what was going on, then went to investigate and shoo the guy away. As soon as he saw her, he ran away again. My barista and her partner both walked me to my car, just to be safe. So yeah, 2 separate attempted kidnappings within 2 weeks was pretty creepy. All for $15 an hour. I've posted this on Reddit a few times, but here it is again, just because it fits. Back in the early 90s, I worked for Domino's Pizza, and during this time, I was an assistant manager, but occasionally we would have to deliver too. On this night, it was just after 11 p.m. I made a delivery to a house in one of our middle-income neighborhoods. As I pull up to the house, there isn't any lights on. If the porch light wasn't on, we're supposed to go to a payphone and call the number on the order. That was to prevent robberies. I never did that. I would just go ahead and go up to the door. But on this night, I sat in my car for a minute. For some reason, I just had this gut feeling, and I always listen to my gut. So I drove back 2 blocks to a payphone and called the number. It was disconnected. I decided to wait just a minute before making the second call that we were supposed to make. If they didn't answer the second time, we were just supposed to go back to the store. As I stood there, I noticed a Pizza Hut driver, but I didn't really think anything of it in the moment. You spot each other while on the road, you know. I called back a 3rd time, still disconnected, and for some reason, I decided to return to the house and just see if someone comes to the door. When I get back, I realize the Pizza Hut car is sitting in the driveway, and I think to myself, what the hell? I turn in the long driveway that is lined on the left side by tall evergreen trees and those shrub things. I immediately notice that there's something big on the ground next to the open door of that Pizza Hut driver's car. I pull up behind him and park. When I get out, I realize it's the driver. Okay, so he must have had a heart attack or something, right? I run up to him to see what I can do to help. When I get up to him, I realize that his skull has been caved in so bad that I can actually see some brain. I immediately run back to my car and lock the door. I drive like 90 miles per hour those 2 blocks to the payphone and call the police. Then call my store and tell them what's going on. And also have them call Pizza Hut. I wait for the cops to come and go back. Eventually the detective comes over to talk to me. He tells me that in the first of the bushes next to the driveway, they found a realty sign. The power is off. The house is completely empty. They also found 2 sets of footprints in the bushes. It appears they ordered pizza from both places and waited to see whoever got there first to rob them. I was first, but I didn't get out of my car, so they had to wait on Pizza Hut to show up. If I had been the one to get out of my car that first time, it would be me laying on the ground dead. For some reason, my gut feeling perhaps, I didn't do what I normally did. I never knocked on another door without a front porch light on, unless I knew that customer really well. This is a good one and it's 100% true. I won't give the exact location, but it was in Rhode Island about 10 years ago. I was working overnight security at a boatyard. There were numerous docks and very large warehouses where things were assembled. The job was great. I could essentially play video games and do homework all night, minus a 20-minute walkabout every 2 hours. The only problem that there is with this job was the totally bizarre and creepy things that continually happen while on shift. You have to understand, a large, rusty, foggy industrial yard like this, late at night in near total dark, minus the lights you turn on, then off, will play tricks on people's minds. I, for one, am very logical and a science-oriented person. We went through probably 35 to 40 guards in a year and a half that I was there, the latter half being lost to other post despite being paid double at this one for much, much less work. While working there, I heard all kinds of stories, but I'll give you some of the ones I personally experienced. One night while patrolling one of the assembly warehouses, I heard something following me from above. It was the strangest thing. I couldn't find a source of the noise, but every time I turned around, I could hear something scatter and run. Something big. Go back to the security room and look through the cameras, and it's a massive damn cat. Some sort of mountain lion. I had to call animal control, and they hunted and caught that damn thing like 5 hours later. The next night, it's back. I can see it in the cameras and call again. This time they couldn't catch it. At one point, I was actually directing animal control to the thing, which I could see on the camera, and they kept walking right past it. I never ended up catching it that second time. Then, this happened on a third night. I almost got my ass in hot water before one of the responding animal control guys sat down right next to me, trying to direct his buddy. To this day, I still don't know what the f was going on with that. Another night, I was walking across one of the large empty sections of the yard and was hit in the leg by a wrench. A large 5-pound wrench. It hit me hard enough to where I stumbled and almost went down. The thing is, there's literally no place this could have fallen from. The nearest roof was a good distance away. Someone would have had to toss it off like a football to hit me with it. Another night, I was going to the bathroom in one of the stalls, and I heard the super large hanger open despite the controls for it being locked. I was weirded out, but decided to finish and then investigate. I heard it close again, then open. As I'm getting ready to get out and then troubleshoot this thing, the bathroom door rips open, slamming hard enough to give me a heart attack, following by every stall door slamming open the same way. Given we were on the dock, there was a lot of seagulls, and occasionally one or two would sit on the end of the pier and watch us do our rounds. One night, a small flock of them, probably 5 to 10, flew into the really compact ball. It was super weird. I've never seen them do anything like that before. Then they proceeded to follow me around at set distance. If I would approach them, they went away. When I walked away, they would follow. When I went into the guard shack, they all landed on the roof. Weirdest damn thing. The last example that I'll give you is one of the few deaths that's happened on site. A worker not wearing a harness doing a warehouse roof repair fell through and landed on some machinery a good 40 feet below. He was dead by the time the ambulance got there. And the following day, the roof caved in on the CEO's office during an international conference call, sending him to the hospital. And the weird thing is, that main office building was a new construction with no maintenance issues whatsoever. Hey everyone, thanks for listening if you stuck around to this point. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell to be notified when future episodes come out. If you have a true scary story of your own, feel free to send it to my email or post it to my subreddit. You can stalk me on Twitter, you can stalk me on Facebook, and you can also stalk me on Instagram. All these links are below. Hey, what's up? I'm Woody. Howdy. What's going on, everybody? Hope you enjoyed this episode. First and foremost, want to give a big shout out to my guest. Thank you for oh my god, I can't fucking talk right now. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you. And to anyone listening to this, if you're still sticking around, make sure you go check out his channel, subscribe, and show him some love, and show him that the horror community is awesome, and we like to, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but appreciate you coming on. Go show his channel some love. I will be uploading another episode probably in the next couple of days. I have every intent of doing another episode, a new episode, and then after that will be a full-on giant compilation for sleep that I talked about doing before. So be on the lookout for both of those, and I think that is it for now. All right, I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.